Hello and welcome to Flipping Through the Internet's #1 Mad Magazine news, review, and interview channel. And, you know, when it rains, it pours. I just got done last Friday with an interview with Andrew Goldfarb, and the editor and founder of the amazing Freaky magazine. And this week I get to talk with the one, well, the two and only, I get to talk with the incredibly talented creative duo, Tom Richmond and Desmond Devlin, and I welcome them in right now. Hello, Tom. Hello, Desmond. How are you?
Hey, everybody. I'm good. Thanks for having us, Patrick.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. It really is an honor to have you here. I'm brimming with excitement and questions to ask you guys. But for those who might be watching who are not, I don't know how you would not be aware of who you guys are. But if you guys want to introduce yourselves, we'll start alphabetically with Desmond.
Okay, well, I'm Desmond Devlin. I've been writing for Mad literally since I was a teenager, and until very recently when we stopped providing new material for them. I'm working on a book project with Tom, which is, I guess, the idea you had us on for. And nice to be here.
Yeah, excellent. And
Right.
Mr. Richmond.
Well, my name is Tom Richmond. I'm a cartoonist, humorous illustrator, and caricaturist. I'm a freelancer, so I've worked for a lot of clients, but I've been working for Mad for about 20 years, started in 2000. I've done dozens and dozens of movie and TV parodies with Des here, and I'm very excited to be here and talk about our work and what we're up to right now.
Yeah, and I want to start off with what is up right now, because there's a reason for the season, and it is your Indiegogo campaign, Claptrap, which I don't know. I always feel for. I was telling my wife about this, and I was like, they're creating this new book of all these movie things that's called Claptrap. She was like, "Are you allowed to say that? Should I be offended?" We're both ignorant, and we had to look up what Claptrap meant. But tell us a little bit about what Claptrap is.
Well, like you say, it's a new book, but a lot of old movies too. Basically, Tom and I have been doing movie parodies and TV parodies for 20 years now. Mad recently stopped publishing those parodies, which we kind of concentrated on quite a bit as a percentage of our work. So there's still movies coming out that people want to see, particularly the Star Wars movie, which we'll talk about. And there's also movies of the past that Mad missed doing, and for whatever different reasons never did parodies. And we decided, since Mad wasn't publishing the kind of work that we like to do, we just joined together and do a book of them. And Tom can tell you how that came to be.
Yeah, we, once Mad decided that they weren't going to do the movie and TV parodies anymore, that's one of the first things they cut, and that was my favorite thing to do in the magazine. I was thrilled when I got to do my first one in early 2001, and Des and I started talking, and we're thinking, you know what? There is no publication or place for these parodies to appear anymore now that Mad's not doing them, and we just didn't want to see the genre die out. We both enjoyed. I grew up reading Mad movie parodies and TV parodies, and I love reading them as much as I love drawing them. So we'd been talking about it for probably about a year, thinking, we really need to figure out how to do this. And we decided to just do a book of them. And so that's how Claptrap came about. Des came up with the title. We're probably going to get sued by the video game company. Apparently, there's a video game character called Claptrap.
There is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's this little robot guy. Although I believe that the word claptrap's been around for a couple centuries.
Yeah,
so I think we're probably okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can copyright a phrase like that. Who knows, though? I mean,
you actually can't. I know that's true, but I didn't know about the robot. But I know you can't. It's very hard to copyright a title.
Yeah. Real quick, Kyle Bridget, mad artist. He says my mic is clipping. So is it better now, Kyle?
Oh, hey, Kyle.
Hello. I don't.
Yeah. And who is this? I don't know which one he's talking about, but honestly, we can all just imagine that he's talking about each of us.
You two
so
guys are pretty hot. I don't know.
yeah, we have. You brought. Oh wait. Oh, I messed up. I made us all go away. So yeah, like the movie parodies. Those are. I mean, when I was growing up, I mean, I think there was more, but also I think the times when I was like reading it most avidly. I think, Tom, you were the artist behind a lot of the ones I was reading. And Des, you have been, like you said, writing since you were a teenager for Mad Magazine.
Right.
And I mean, you have written not only a ton of movie parodies that I know and that I read, but also one of my favorite, I'll get into my favorite of all time. You actually wrote one of my favorite segments in Mad Magazine, Desmond. Actually, I'm going to get into it right now, just because I might forget later. But Melvin and Jenkins.
Oh yeah.
Melvin and Jenkins was, I mean, that was, correct me if I'm wrong, a take on Goofus and Gallant from Highlights magazine.
Speaking of copyright infringement, basically, I wrote an article. I wrote a parody of Goofus and Gallant from Mad, and it was Goofus and Gallant looks at, I think it was like sex education or something like that.
Yeah.
And they liked the article, so we want to do more of this. But we're not doing any more of Goofus or Gallant, because when you do it once, it's parody. You do it twice, it's a lawsuit. So, so we developed these like new, kind of clearly it's like the same general dynamic. We created two characters that different backgrounds, different sort of approaches. Melvin's kind of like sociopathic, and that was a feature that ran for a long time. And
Art by Kevin Pope.
I was about to say Kevin Pope. Well, I only met once in my life. We worked together. We collaborated on that for years and years and years. And we were only in the same room once at one of the Mad parties. So,
yeah. Oh, hold on. Des, I think you're kind of difficult to hear. I don't have control. Yeah, somebody's Kyle's saying it's a little quiet on your end.
How do I turn it up?
I think just move closer. I think that's probably effective.
No, Melvin and Jenkins began. I'll just try to speak louder. I have a tendency to mumble on occasion, so I'll just try.
All right, and I think I was really loud at the start.
For the diaphragm.
Yeah. It's like in Singing in the Rain. Mm-hmm. Just do some of that elocution stuff.
Yeah, the equipment may be working fine, and I'm not. It's entirely possible. So.
So you kind of brought up something like you were working with Kevin Pope, and that's a distance thing. Mm-hmm. And you and Tom, I mean, you're not a Minnesota boy, are you, Des?
No, I'm in New York.
Yeah. So like, what is that? I mean, you guys this is probably old hat for you, but like working that far apart as an artist-writer team, like, is that difficult?
Not especially. I mean, it's pretty commonplace with Tom and I, but that's the way we've been doing it, even though we've met each other way more times than me and poor Kevin. But over the years, we got together at various events and things. But working on the Mad parodies, I mean, basically, I would write them, and my job would be just about done by the time Tom even started. And we would communicate with each other from time to time. Like I'd tip him off. Sometimes I'm about to do a movie. I think you're going to just get it. He would see something in the script that he had a question about, and he'd send me an email. But it definitely is like kind of like two parts being done mostly separately and then merged together, because I know how to write for him and he knows how to draw, to make the jokes better. So,
yeah, I'm used to Dez's pacing and the type of writing that he does. So we've been working together for so long. I sort of understand what he's trying to do in these panels. And funnily enough, though, the one thing that is very different working together here is that we didn't directly communicate very often when we worked with Mad, because they wanted, at least for me, they didn't want me to call Des. if I had a question. They wanted me to go through them.
Yeah.
So I always had to call. Oh yeah. Otherwise, I would have been on the phone with you a couple of times for everything.
I think I just contact you whenever I wanted. I didn't know that was breaking a rule.
No, Sam Viviano was the art director at MAD the whole time I was working for him, and he was very specific. He said, "Look, if you've got a question about anything, come to me, and if I can't answer it, I'll go to Des or Arnie or." Dick or whoever wrote it.
Messages from Sam saying that somebody wanted an answer.
Yeah, exactly. They were they wanted to make sure that they were in the loop, and I think that's probably why they did it that way. So now it's just you and I, and we've got no overseers telling us what to do. We also got nobody correcting our spelling or, any of that kind of stuff. Nobody's art directing me to say, "Oh, you got to turn this guy around because he's facing the wrong way." Yeah, exactly. I don't think that doesn't really look like, this guy. So I don't have that. But although my wife will tell me that, she'll look it over and say, "Yeah, that doesn't look like Brad Pitt. You've got to work on that one."
I imagine the worst thing would be like when people say like, "Who is that?"
Yeah, I get that a lot. So
yeah, I bet. Yeah, it's caricature is one of those art forms that I know I've gained an appreciation for the older that I've gotten. I think like I'm able to notice now what I wasn't able to before, which is like the distinctions that each artist brings to their artwork. Like when I'm doing my kind of regular flipping through issues and I go to that vital features, like I try to pick out like which one is Mort and which one is I always forget his name.
Angelo Torres?
Yeah, Angelo Torres. Or like Sam Viviano. I try to pick these out, whereas like when I was a kid, it was all the same to me. And so I really like going through those issues, old and new now, because I think I have a slightly more discerning eye. Although I think most people who have watched the show know that I get my predictions wrong a lot. But at least there's a reason when I am choosing the people.
Oh, that's interesting, because I know a lot of the procedure of putting together the mat, they wanted every artist to have their own style and be very distinct from one another. So they wouldn't want to have, if somebody was as funny as Don Martin, drew like Don Martin, they still wouldn't use that person because they didn't want two Don Martins, they didn't want two Mort Druckers, they didn't want two Paul Cokers or whoever.
Yeah.
And so they really like looked for a whole balance of, different approaches and different styles, and you can really tell somebody's art from across the room. But I guess it depends on how people read the magazine. Maybe they just like the crazy stuff and the fun stuff, and they're not so much interested in the detail or the the procedural way that the thing is assembled. So
yeah,
interesting.
Well, and that was my view as like a child looking at it. It was like,
right.
Where's that like kind of the silliness? Where's Sergio hidden like a little naked lady? Stuff like that. That's what was catching my eye. But
your first introduction to porn, Sergio.
I think it was. I think there's. I think maybe Kyle Bridges too. But Doug Guilford is also in the chat. Hello. He says hello, fellas.
Hello? We don't know that guy.
Yeah.
Hey, Doug. I'm surprised you found the time.
Yeah.
You single-handedly put together the best Mad Magazine site on the internet.
Absolutely.
In ways that are freakishly fearful. So.
Yeah, that's I never said this, I don't believe, but Doug Guilford, his website, madcoversite.com, if you have been living under a rock, that was the reason I sort of built this YouTube channel, is because I thought it would be nice to have like a video reference, hopefully someday, to the scale of his visual reference on that website. So yeah, it's absolutely one of the greatest, probably the greatest Mad site of all time. I do actually, I'm going to jump back to this because I got about halfway through and then got distracted. So there are several different perks. We got the putts, the PDF, $12. this is the one I'm interested in. The hardcover, the Claude edition, $25. What do you guys do? You want to talk about any of these specific tiers or anything?
Well, so we that was another thing. It took a year to put, to talking about the book. Part of that was like all these details we didn't even know about when we entered into it. And one of them is you have to set separate tiers for people to back the project, and it's more money or less money, and they're attached to these different features or different products or different opportunities. And you have to sort of guess, how to space them out and guess how many of them to put up there. And we went back and forth on all this stuff so many times. So hopefully we got the right balance. But really, the people contributing to the book would be the ones who could tell us that more than we could tell them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, it's not really that apparent when you're going through here because they only gave you a few characters, a limited number of characters to describe it. But whatever tier you choose, you get everything below it also.
Oh,
right?
Okay, yeah.
So it's not like you have to choose this and you only get that.
You're looking right there at this knucklehead. You drew it, but then everything you scrolled past, they get that in addition to the level that they're buying in at.
Oh, right. So yeah, you'll get a Zoom call. You'll get what was it? The script pages,
right?
And the pencils,
right? And there's a print, and you get the Star Wars PDF at the beginning. You get everything.
Oh, very nice. So that's the Star Wars PDF. That's like ready to go.
But that's the first thing that shipped out.
Yeah.
Go.
We're not going to send that out immediately.
Not the day the campaign closes, but
right. We'll send it out before the book comes out, but not too much before the book comes out. I don't think. We don't want to release anything that we don't want to ruin the surprise for all the print people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once the PDF gets out in the wild, it'll probably get online, and then people will see it there rather than in the book. But we also know that the Star Wars movie is maybe the newest movie that we're doing in the book, and people have more, anxiousness to see that than like if we do a parody from a 30-year-old movie. So
yeah. Look at this. The Megalomaniac, Be the Boss. Two of them. You pick the movie, and they were both picked up. I think that says something about how much people love your guys' work. I mean, holy smokes, that's awesome that you sold both of those.
That is cool.
The original artwork with you. I mean, that's awesome. This is like you guys, and I should say congratulations is in order because you guys met and surpassed your goal of $45,000.
Yeah.
And you're well on your way to the next, which is pick your sketch parody. What is
that
this?
one? Well, what that means is if you scroll down and you'll see one of the perks is it the Schmendrick? I think it's called. Or the
Schmendrick.
Yeah, Schmendrick. So that one you get. I'm going to do an original sketch in the book for you.
It's not a sketch. It's actually a very finished drawing that he's planning on doing.
Yeah, it's not going to be just a little 10-minute scribble. I mean, I'm going to do like one of my sketch of the week sort of crosshatch jobs in it. So it'll be a nice drawing. But I was just going to pick like a handful of characters from the book, and I was going to do just whichever one I felt like doing. But if we get to that goal, then all the people that are going to get one of those sketches, you can tell me which movie spoof you want the character to come from. So if you absolutely hate everything to do with Star Wars and you don't want me drawing Finn in your book, then you can tell me, oh, I want it to come from this movie instead. So I still get to pick which character, but it'll be from whatever movie you wanted it to be.
Whatever your favorite movie in the book is.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Okay, so that guy from New York City Comic Con who really likes Shemp, he's not going to be able to say, draw me a Shemp again. All right.
No. It's got to be one of the characters from the book. It doesn't make much sense to do anything different.
Franklin Roosevelt in our movie parody book.
Exactly.
So have you? I must have missed that. Have you announced all of the movie parodies that you have planned already?
It's convenient you asked that, even though unwittingly so. We're about to announce several of the movies this week, beginning tomorrow. Basically, the second we have the Star Wars splash page is up. It's at the top of the campaign page, but the second splash page is going out tomorrow.
Yeah.
As soon as Tom sends it, and then later in the week, maybe about a day or two from now, we're going to announce the first 4 movies that are definitely in the book.
Oh, that's
But
awesome.
we're not announcing all the movies because the backers of the book are actually going to be voting on some of the movies, on 2 of the movies that we're going to do. So we've left spots open for the people who are supporting us and really making the book happen. They're actually taking part in it, and they're actually helping to determine what the book's shape and outcome is. So they're going to be voting on their favorites, and then be getting a list, and they'll be like everyone's whatever the top 2 most popular choices are. We're going to do. So it's sort of like the Megalomaniac, but many more people and for less money.
Yeah. I had what was the question I was about to ask with the all of the? Oh yeah, do you guys want you don't want to like give me an exclusive, like drop one of those movies that you're going to be announcing, do you?
I don't know.
Don't worry about it.
We've been promoting literally on this Wednesday of this week. The second splash is coming up, so we don't want to like undercut that right away.
Yeah, I will. I'll listen when that comes out. I'm gonna do a video on it. So
I will tell you, one of our backers lives in Sweden, and he sent me a message on Facebook today, and he guessed 2 of the movies we're doing correctly. So,
really?
So basically, the other movies we're doing, it's like we did a parody. Tell about A Christmas Story, Tom, so I don't like take up all the time talking.
Oh, right. So when Mad moved to Burbank, initially the editor was Bill Morrison.
Yeah.
And I was in New York, I think for New York Comic-Con, and
Right.
he was there before he took over. That was in October, and they took over in January. And I was having dinner with Bill and a bunch of other Mad guys, and he said, "I've got this idea I think would be fun. We should go back and do some classic like cult hit movies that Mad never did in the magazine, and be like, because it's tough to do movie parodies nowadays that make them timely, because movies go in and out of the theater so fast, and by the time you do the parody, they're long gone from the theater. So this way we could do movies that people have already seen and they love and are very familiar with. So the first one that he wanted to do was A Christmas Story. So Des wrote a parody of that movie, and I drew it, and it was in the December issue in, what was that, 2018, right?
I think that's right.
The 6th issue, I think, or 5th issue or something. That those guys did. And it was a lot of fun, because this was a movie that, I've probably seen 20 times, and most other people have seen 20 times. So it makes it really fun to put all the details in there. People are going to recognize I had a running gag where the dogs from the movie, from the Buck Kisses next door, or whatever their names were, are in a lot of panels. They're like running around in the background all the time and going through garbage cans and stuff. And it was a lot of fun. And so that the familiarity of those shows and movies make it even more fun to do the parodies. And that's basically, kind of our concept with Claptrap, because originally we were going to do, half new movies and half classic movies. Mm-hmm. But then 2020 happened, and there are no new movies. So we kind of switched gears, and we're like, well, I guess we're probably just going to do all classics. We might do a new one if any do come out between now and like June or July, when we have to have this all wrapped up. But at this point, it's probably going to be mostly.
Nothing to choose from. And they say, for instance, like A Christmas Story, people are so familiar that you can literally go scene by scene and say the lines. Whatever the biggest movie is of the year, a lot of people just haven't seen it. They just have a general sense of it. So you have a much more built-in familiarity and affection for movies when you cherry pick the classic ones that people like the best. Yeah. So I think it's going to work out for the book. I mean, but Mad couldn't do that because they were on a different kind of publishing schedule than the book would be.
Yeah. Well, and that's the interesting thing about the like reading through the oldest issues of Mad or older issues of Mad. You know, I'll come across a TV parody, and it's like, what is this? Like, it's like, what? These are high school nurses in Puerto Rico. Like, what show? What was this?
Well, the TV shows, they actually have a better batting average on because the shows they were mostly on the air for a while. But if it doesn't go into repeats, and if like the people who watched it, age and die or whatever, and you're reading it 40 years later, you can go, this is, people wouldn't know a show like Marcus Welby, MD anymore, and that was a #1 show.
Yeah.
Right.
But the movies, at least the top ones that people keep watching have a much longer afterlife than some of the TV series.
Yeah. Well, but even some of the movies, it seems like they, there must have been like 2 movies that came out around that time, and it's like, we're putting our money on this one. And it's nobody remembers it.
That's probably true in some cases, and sometimes, like Des said, it was because of the timing. Mm-hmm. Maybe the issue was going to press and they wanted to do this movie instead, and they didn't have time to get to it before it was old hat, or who knows. Like in the case of A Christmas Story, that wasn't a very big hit.
It wasn't hit at all.
Yeah, it was like hardly anybody saw it, so they say they didn't do it. But then Mad sometimes would pick movies that ended up nobody even remembers the movie and were terrible flops. But at the time they did it for whatever reason. Like when I asked Nick Meglin, what movie do you regret doing the most with Mad? And he always answered the same thing. Anytime anybody asked him that question, that was the movie Bunny Lake is Missing.
Right.
I've never even heard of that movie.
I think there was an Otto Preminger directed movie, and he was a big director in the late 50s, early 60s. So it's considered like his next project. So it seemed like, okay, there's a hook. It'll probably do well. They took a chance, and then nobody watched it.
Yeah,
and it was Laurence Olivier was the star, and so a big name, big director.
Prestige movie or something.
Yeah, movie was a huge flop. Got its own parody in Mad, and yet they didn't do A Christmas Story and many other movies that were actually really big hits. But like
Faye Dunaway, she did Chinatown, and then she did Network, and then her next movie came out. She said, well, that's great. Let's hop on this. It was The Eyes of Laura Mars.
Oh yeah,
which again lost to the ages for the most part. But full parody. That's the one Victor Bartolo always mentions. Like, what's the one parody that really people look at it and go, huh?
Yeah.
And he would say Eyes of Laura Mars very quickly.
Is there go ahead.
Oh, that's where we don't have that problem with Claptrap, because we get to cherry pick the ones that everybody these are going to be famous movies that everybody's seen, or at least they've heard about because they're super famous movies, but for whatever reason Matt didn't do them. So there will be no Bunny Lake is Missing in our unless one of the megalomaniacs insists we do Leprechaun Back in the Hood, or
Leprechaun in the Hood.
In trouble.
But I think that is enough cult following that it could be quite popular.
Let's see. Well, our 2 megalomaniacs have both let us know which movies they want us to do, and one of them is a tremendous hit, and the other one is also a tremendous hit, but it's an older movie which has a longer pedigree. So both of them are going to be very suitable to the people when they find out what they are.
Yeah,
we got lucky. It could have been dicey if people had very weird taste and enough money to pay us to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I was hoping they'd pick Cats because I wanted to do the butthole cut parody.
I was about to say, would you include the butthole?
Absolutely.
We have to fill the butthole gap in everyone's lives.
So, like, when you guys are picking out, I imagine that when you were picking the ones that you guys actually get to pick, you had a lot in mind. Was it difficult for you to like whittle those down to the ones you were going to move forward with?
To a degree, basically, we both. I put together a big list. I sent it to Tom. Tom already knew a bunch he wanted to do before he even got the list. And we sort of like said, "What do you think about this? What do you think about this?" And for the most part, we were on the same wavelength. And we also, Tom would mention it to like somebody in his family or somebody he knew. So, what do you think of this? And if they went, "Oh yeah," then he'd report back and say, "Okay, that seems like the people's choice."
Yeah.
And the same thing. So I mean, we're not, for the most part, we're not going for movies, that we think people might sort of like. I mean, they're really like these iconic movies, and some of them are gigantic hits. Some of them are, these characters or these stories that people, know backwards and forwards already, and that's good for us parodying them because, everybody's so familiar with it. We don't have to explain things or over-explain things, which sometimes you have to do with a new movie. Part of the new movie is exposition. You got to and someone who hasn't read the movie, which a lot of people have, someone's reading the parody who hasn't seen the movie, you have to clue them in on what the movie is and who the characters are and what the dynamics are. And sometimes that, makes the comedy a little bit, weighted down because you have to establish it or it doesn't make any sense. And when we still have to establish it as a matter of, functionality, but we don't have to worry that somebody hasn't seen, movie X, or won't even know what we're talking about.
Well, so like with some of these movies, I'm assuming that, like you said, like they're going to be hits, they're going to be well known. Do you guys feel any pressure? Like, because undoubtedly you're going to pick ones that people have a lot of fondness about, like A Christmas Story, right? Like that's close to people's hearts. Like to parody that, do you feel pressure going into that writing process? No.
It's fun to jab people in the heart. I would say about the only time you really have to question. I mean, if it's a movie you love, it's more fun to parody. If it's a movie you hate, it's more fun to parody. So all these movies are very much loved. Even if they're not necessarily my favorite movie ever at times, we know that there's such a huge fan base for these that it's going to be well received.
Yeah.
Really, the only ones that are a little bit you have to think about it when you're doing a really good comedy movie. So if you're parodying, because like we're supposed to be the funny ones making people laugh, and if you can't at least like measure up to whatever level the comedy movie's at, it just automatically looks like a weaker effort than it would if you were doing like some drawing room Anthony Hopkins movie from 1994 where he's playing a unhappy butler. The comedy is going to clash with that and it'll work okay. But if you're just trying to make your jokes as good as Tootsie's or something,
yeah,
you better do it.
Yeah, or Beverly Hills Cop. That's like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a comment I want to highlight. Tom, you can still sketch cats, Tom, if it doesn't make it.
Well, one of the tiers we have now, if we hit a certain stretch goal, we'll be adding an extra parody to the book. So right now there's 10 parodies guaranteed, but an 11th parody we're not too far away, a few percentage points away in terms of the money, and that the 11th parody will be added to the book as an extra feature. And if the people vote, they want to see cats, then they're going to see cats.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm hoping for. All right, that's what I'm putting my energy behind.
Then I'll have to watch it. That's the bad part. I'll actually have to see it.
So you guys talked a little bit about your kind of, creative shorthand, right? Like, how to write for Tom. Tom, how to draw for Des. Is that so one thing I'm kind of curious about is that writer artist dynamic. And I think it was Dalton Vaughn I was interviewing, and we were talking about a piece that he drew that Dick DiBartolo wrote. And Dick is, from my understanding of that conversation, is a highly detailed writer, like down to like that the chicken fat, that some of those things get written in. And I know, Tom, you've drawn some stuff for him, so I'm curious about what that was like for you. But also, like, how does that dynamic work between the two of you?
Well, when it comes to writers have different styles, like you're saying. So some writers have got a very succinct sort of style, and they don't even use very many words, and a lot of the gags are visual. So they're going to describe the visual gag, and then the dialogue just sort of, it works with the visual. And then some writers write jokes in the boxes that don't really need, a lot of visual support. And Dick was one of those guys who wrote and talked about the visuals a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to chicken fat, there's like two different things that you have to do in a parody with the art. One is what's called sell the gag. So there's something going on in the panel that needs a visual punch to it, and that has to do with what the writer is describing or the joke that they're telling in the boxes or whatever it might be. And then there's the chicken fat. That's the little background gags, right? Yeah. Now, some writers really suggest a lot of chicken fat stuff and say, here's some ideas of what you want in the background. Or what you could do in the background. But as the artist, it's sort of up to me to do that chicken fat stuff. So like Des was great about always suggesting a lot of different things. And he's basically just throwing stuff out there and saying, hey, if you like this, this would be great in the background or whatever. But I was always told by Matt, it's like that's your department. So if you like what the writer wrote or suggested, great, go for it. Go ahead and write it. Or put it in. If you want to change it a little bit, go ahead. Or if you want to do something completely different, or you don't like that gag and just don't do it. So it was up to me about that stuff all the time. And Dick didn't really write a lot of chicken fat gags. I mean, I didn't see a lot of that in his writing. Arnie Kogan wrote almost no chicken fat gags. Des would suggest many, and I would usually do them. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes Des would do this thing. I remember this one 2-page splash in the Hobbit 3 parody, which actually didn't end up in the Mad. It was done for
Loot Crate.
What did we do it for? Oh, that Loot Crate thing. So it was a special issue of Mad that was a Loot Crate giveaway thing. And so it was the 3rd Hobbit movie, and this is what Des wrote. Big battle scene, and then he listed like 500 characters that I could put in it, and then he probably wrote for an hour all this, and then he went out to dinner, and then I got that, and I spent like 5 days drawing that 2-page. That was the absolute hands down craziest thing I ever did for Mad. And it didn't even appear in the magazine. That was the killer.
Was it the bonus issue? Was it the one with the
Aquaman cover?
Okay, yes. And I think that was the only one. I think I got that in the thing. I'm gonna have to pull that one out.
Yeah,
all right.
Tom did. He got so much stuff in there, but I guess I drove him nuts.
I just was looking at this like, you got to be kidding me. I'm never going to fit all these people in there.
No, all the stuff I put, all the art things, I call them art notes in my scripts. And every one of them is a suggestion. I know Tom's going to come up with his own, anyway. So it's just sort of like, if it points him in a direction, it's fine. If he doesn't like it, it's fine. If he says this is great, it saves you, 2 minutes of thinking time. It's all fine with me. I mean, he's in charge of the visuals. That's obvious.
It's funny that Des and I think alike a lot. And so what would sometimes frustrate me is I would find out I was going to do a parody of something, and I would think, oh, I got an idea for this great running gag for this parody. And then when I get Des's script, it'll say art notes. You should do this running gag throughout the whole thing. And I'm like, oh no, now I don't get credit for that. I'll have to say Des came up with it. Come on. So I think for what I thought about doing is when I heard about that, I was going to write down all the background gags and stuff that I came up with right away, and then I was going to mail it to myself so it got postmarked, and that way I'd be able to prove that I also came up with that.
What is that, like the poor man's copyright? It's right. Is that what they call?
Do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but we do. We think alike. I mean, we come up with the same gags. We think of the same kind of way. That's why we work so well together.
Yeah, I gotta say, I mean, after a certain point, whenever I would write a parody, I didn't know if they would give it to Tom. They might give it to an artist, Herman Mejia, who's very talented. By Anton Emden, who's out of Australia, did a couple things towards the end of the Mad, and he's very good. But so I didn't know. It wasn't like we're doing a movie parody and this guy's going to draw it. I mean, but I just assumed it would be Tom, because Tom was the go-to guy for so many years. So in my head, I was sort of writing for, the kind of jokes that he could sell and the kind of, panel layouts that he prefers, or that I guess that he preferred. Obviously, once in a while I guess wrong. So just writing it, I subconsciously just assumed that Tom was going to do this. So I was writing, in his wheelhouse. I hoped.
Yeah, it usually was.
As a reader, from the reader's perspective, I was always curious: are the movies that are picked for the magazine, is that coming? Is that top down, or do you guys ever, once Tom was able to circumvent Sam and get Des's number, did you guys ever talk about possible movie ideas that you would want to parody and pitch?
Tom and I did, but I would suggest, I'd go ask the editors, you're going to be doing this one, you're going to be doing that one.
Yeah.
I know that certain artists, there's an artist named Ray Alma who loves Planet of the Apes, and he was pitching, man, let me do Planet of the Apes. There's a movie coming out, and they did. It worked. So, most of the time, everything with the movies to do is the editorial decision, but some of them were obvious. I did all 8 Harry Potter movies. I wasn't saying, hey, you guys want to do the 7th Harry Potter movie? It's coming out. What do you think? After a while, it was just an upcoming assignment. But yeah, I would say there's this TV show, and they would go yes or no, and it was very give and take with the editors in that sense. But the decisions on what to put in their magazine, they had that done in the office.
Yeah. All right. Real quick, if for those of you who are tuned in, I think we have 11 viewers right now. Hey, that's pretty good. That's pretty good for one of my live streams. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. I probably won't get to them right away, but I will try my best to get to them. One thing I was kind of curious about is that these movie and television parodies are so tied to Mad. Like, Mad wasn't the only game in town, obviously, but
well, they created them, and then
the
magazine that copied Mad copied those. So
there
were lots more of them. John Severin was the guy who drew a lot of those for Cracked, and he was sort of like the top. He was like 5 levels above just about everybody else who worked regularly at Cracked. So they had loads of sequential parodies or interview type features, which Mad also did. But the original, the basic structure of the parody, the way it's laid out, it originated with Mad in the late 50s.
Yeah, and so with that, they don't own it, right? So how did they talk?
Parody. Frank Jacobs wrote song parodies, but he doesn't own the song parody, or Mad doesn't own the song parody. Yeah.
Oh man, Frank Jacobs is my hero. I love Frank Jacobs so much. But really, so what I'm trying to get to though is that, did Matt have anything to say when you guys announced this book idea of doing something that was so tied to their brand?
I haven't heard anything. There are people at Mad who are aware of this. There are people at Mad who have bought copies of it, who supported the book.
Yeah.
There aren't, and the magazine's in California. There aren't that many people at the magazine anymore to react to anything.
Yeah.
They have their own problems to worry about more than some project the two of us are doing, on our own. But I have my writing style. Tom has his drawing style. That didn't change just because they changed the format of the magazine.
Yeah.
And we do this. We think we do it well. Some people also agree, and it's just something that we can do. We've chosen to do it. It's nobody owns the format of parody. It's just a form of comedy.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, that's good to hear. I don't know. I this is probably says more about me than it does about anything else. But I think of the big corporation and then the little guys and, trying to go out on their own. And so that's I was just curious if that was something that came up at all. And I'm very pleased to hear it didn't. We do have here from Hubert Burke. Tom and Desmond, what famous person have either of you parodied? Have paid either of you the best compliment best compliment or insult about your parody of a person?
Tom probably has better stories. I don't think they care what a writer does, but the drawing they are very intensely interested in. If I make a joke comparing him to Hitler, they'll go, whatever. But if Tom draws the cheek over here a little too big, they go, that son of a bitch.
Yeah. Most of the people I've actually heard from are thrilled that they're in Mad Magazine because they grew up as fans or whatever, you know.
Mhm.
In fact, I've sold the original art to a lot of celebrities, mostly directors though, or directors or producers rather than the actors. But as far as probably my favorite one, I don't know, is this a PG-13 show or is this an R-rated show? Can I swear in this?
Tonight it's R-rated.
Oh, okay. Got it. Well, so I did a 2-page splash of a feature that Mad used to do called a Mad peek behind the scenes on the set of a show or a movie.
Yeah.
And I did one of The Sopranos. It was called a Mad Peek Behind the Scenes of The Sopranos. And it was this big 2-page splash, and it was all the Sopranos characters like on the set. And there was a little bada bing, strip club sort of area. And then all these other people standing around reading the script and little jokes and gags all over the place. And so one of the producers of the show saw that and called Mad, and they called me and said, the guy called me, they gave him my number, and he said, could you do a print of this? Because I'd like to send it to, or give it to the cast. And I said, sure. So I went out and got prints made of this thing and gave it to him. But I said, if I do that, if I send you an extra print, will you get cast members to sign it and send it back to me? So he said, sure. So couple months later, I get this in the mail, and it's signed by literally everybody on the cast.
Yeah.
But the caricature I did of James Gandolfini wasn't real flattering. It was he has this great big belly, and he's wearing a wife beater, and on it it's written on it, "Body by Gabagool." And so I made him pretty fat, and he did sign it, but he signed it, "Fuck you." Which that's hanging proudly in my studio, and I thought that was pretty apropos since it is coming from Tony Soprano.
That's better than any compliment.
Yeah, that is an awesome signature, or what, I don't know what you would call it, a little note. We have a question about the Claptrap Indiegogo. And before you answer this one, the Claptrap Indiegogo is in the description of this video. So whether you're watching now or the recording of it, check it out and support it. Will Claptrap have any other pages with non-movie spoofs?
Yeah, we're planning to do that because, in part because the movie parodies are turning out very well so far. And we think people are going to like them, but we don't want to put in a book. It's a parody. Okay, goodbye, everybody. So if you have some other ingredients in the book to change things up from time to time, we're going to do that definitely. We already have some ideas in the works for those. What was I about to say? Yes. Anyways, the answer is yes.
All right. Excellent. Yeah. So Gadget Kindle, you have that to look forward to. Gadget Kindle also, do you have any plans on adding Mad Easter eggs? A little Max Corn, the Poyet. What is that? How do you, the Poyet or anything like that?
I think it's about right. I don't think so. I think we're going to, they said we're not going to draw Alfred E. Newman in any of the panels. We're not going to draw the Spy versus Spy. If we do a spy movie, it's just really, it's not necessary. I mean, we're doing the parodies differently in some ways than Mad. We're trying to use the format of the book to open things up or to do something that we necessarily haven't done before. And so so clearly this is we've been working in our styles for our whole lives. And we've done stuff for Mad, so it's going to be very Mad-like in a sense, but we don't want it to seem like this is a Mad product.
Yeah.
So we definitely will not be doing any Mad icons in it. So
right.
You won't see Arthur the Plant or the Mad Zeppelin or any of that stuff. That wouldn't be spoofing Mad. That would be being Mad.
Just borrowing,
Yeah, we're not going to do that.
We worked at Mad for a long time. He was there 20 years. I was there 36 years. They treated us very well. We got a lot of work together done, and there's no reason to take advantage of that position of ours.
No.
Yeah. And it's All right, excellent. And Now you mentioned something that I'm very interested in, and I didn't think about it before. You said that you're taking this opportunity in the different form factor to open things up. I mean, like it seemed like a pretty set number of pages. You have the cool splash page in the beginning where you have all of the characters and like maybe a big setting. So like what things are changing and what things are staying the same about that?
Well, we have the Star Wars splash panel up on the the claptrap, the typical kind of splash we would do. We would have done the same splash 10 years ago if we were working on this 10 years ago. But Mad had a certain, generally the parodies were 6 pages, sometimes 5 on occasion. Usually it's kind of average about 6 pages. We're going to be averaging more than that. We'll be able to include more of the movies in them by stretching the page count a bit. We're going to try some things with the layouts of the pages as they come up and help the movie parodies. Which is basically we don't want to give people just exactly the same thing they're expecting. We want to give them something, things are going to turn and go, oh, that's different. Oh, that's cool. They really messed that one up, those fools. But whatever. It'll be what they want to get, but something that they're not expecting to get.
Yeah. And some things will be very familiar. Like we are going to do the word boxes that nest in between one another with the little connecting things. That's going to be similar to what we did with Mad, and the lettering is typeset, instead of being written like comic book style. But Mad always did like different page layouts where they'd have a skinny page or a short page where there was a marginal area where Sergio's drawings would go, Mm-hmm. And they would stagger things somewhat for that purpose. We're not doing that, of course. So all the pages will be full bleeds.
Okay.
Which usually you'd only get one full bleed in a Mad parody. Maybe the last page will be a full bleed. So a lot more room for the art. The pages are a little bigger, 8 3/4 by 11 5/8 or something like that, I think. So they're a little bit bigger than a Mad page, and it's going to be on very nice glossy paper, heavier stock. So we take advantage of that with the colors and also like the backgrounds. Like Mad always just had white gutters in between all their panels. We're going to, I'm going to do some kind of cool background stuff in there. Maybe do something that would associate with the movie or whatever. Mm-hmm. We could do some of that. So there will be some differences. I mean, you're not going to open it up and go, oh, did I just pick up an old copy of Mad, or what is this? It's definitely going to have its own stamp. We're not just copying the format, and we'll have some fun, some stuff that they wouldn't let us do. Like I don't think I can remember a time with Mad where I had something come out of a panel, like a character go out of the panel border. Yeah. And I'm going to be able to, I'm free to do that now, so there will be some visual differences and we're going to definitely going to make it our own.
So almost like that, like incorporating some sort of like comic book elements, like, cause that's what I think of where like, the panels break apart a little bit more and maybe characters extend out of them. That's pretty cool.
We were talking recently. I'm not going to describe this well because it's supposed to be a surprise. But there's a particular layout for a particular page that's going to be very different from anything you would have seen in Mad Magazine. Maybe I would have thought of it, proposed it to them if we were doing the movie, but we never would have done the movie, and they might not have gone for the idea because it's definitely off Mad format. But we think people are really going to get a kick out of what when they say it, that it's done for a good, structural and comedic reason. So. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. The other thing, real quick, you mentioned the full bleed, and I mean that is basically you are taking up every inch of printable space. You're not having really like the gutters you were saying that you would see in a comic book of like the Bronze Age or really in Mad. Do I have a Mad around? I don't. Embarrassingly. All right. Very cool. Well,
it's a simpler thing. We're not doing department heads. Every Mad article has it's such and such department. So we do Star Wars, and it'd be like look at me departments, whatever. And we're not doing that because that's just sort of such a Mad feature. Even though some of the other Mad copycat magazines did that, it just seemed like a very simple thing to differentiate, the experience and also just make it a separate book project that people would feel they're getting something more than they might have gotten otherwise.
Yeah. Well, the like one thing I ask a lot of folks is about, well, only the people who've worked for Mad is like how they got their start in Mad Magazine. With you guys, you guys have been both at it for a very long time, and I'm curious to know like how was it that you got your start? Particularly, if I can expand on that a little bit, Tom, I did a video where I was kind of looking back at your very first appearance, and when I look at your art, it's with a lot of the artists. Like I looked at Al Jaffe and Mort Drucker, their style changed a ton from that very first time they were in Mad to when they got their style. And what I found interesting is like, Tom, you came in with your style and you had a very polished look, like right off the bat. So I'm curious as to like, how did you get into Mad? And like what were, I'll stop asking the same question 8 times and just let you talk.
You want me to go first, Des?
Sure. I mean, your story's better than mine, so maybe I should go first.
You go first.
All right. Well, see, I started writing at Mad when I was a teenager. I actually sold my first piece that long ago, and one day when I was in high school, I used to do my own sort of monthly humor magazine. I would literally write it and draw it and print it, and then I would sell it to teachers, to classmates, and I made like a decent amount of, spending money off of that, whatever. And towards the end, getting, later in high school, I lived in New York. Matt was in New York, so I called up the office. I said, "Hi, I'm so and so. I have this, I've been doing a humor magazine at school. I was wondering if I could come in sometime and talk to you guys about Mad." And this person said, "Yeah, you come in tomorrow." I said, "Well, I can't come tomorrow. I'm in high school." I said, "Okay, come the day after tomorrow," which is also a school day. But I cut class. I snuck out of high school. I went into Midtown Manhattan, met with the editors. So I was with John Ficarra and Nick Meglin. And John in particular took an interest in what I had, to show them, which was, it was kind of, childish, work at the time. But I had been keeping such a diligent schedule. I think they thought that was a good sign also. And so John said, "Okay, send everything to me in the future." He gave me like one of Tom Cook's articles to give me, this is how he would submit an article in this format. And I just, went back and forth with him until I, sold the first thing and started selling more and more. And so that, I sort of wanted to work for Mad when I was about 9 or 10 years old, and then I just went ahead and did it. So it's been a very, straight line in that sense. But people like that I was there as a teenager. They think that's kind of unusual. So. Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's the dream of a teenager. Like, I mean,
a certain kind of teenager.
Yeah.
Teenagers have other more interesting dreams. No perverse.
Yeah. But I always admire like when people do stuff like that, because I never would have thought to try. Like I
didn't really think about it. I just sort of did it.
Yeah, which I greatly admire that. That's awesome. Tom, how did you get your start at Mad?
Well, I loved Mad as a kid, like everybody else, and I always loved to draw. So, but I didn't really have any aspirations to drawing for Mad until I was started doing caricatures at a theme park. That was my summer job when I was my first year of college. I got a summer job doing caricatures at a Six Flags park, and all these artists that I was working with were carrying around these stacks of Mad magazines, and I hadn't seen a Mad in probably 6 or 7 years. And I said, "Wow, was the artwork this great in Mad when I was a kid?" And sure enough, I look at it, yeah, it was that good. But it was many years later that I kind of decided, wow, maybe I should really try to give this a shot. So I was president of an organization called the National Caricaturist Network at that time. It's now called the International Society of Caricaturists, but at that time it was the NCN. and we had a mini convention in New Britain, Connecticut, of all places. It's a little town in Connecticut. For whatever reason, this town was where the the first traveling retrospective show of Al Hirschfeld's work was gonna debut. He knew the guy who owned the gallery or something, I guess. And Al Hirschfeld was going to be there. So we had a little mini convention for the NCN there that I organized. And we usually had a guest speaker for that sort of thing. So I invited Sam Viviano, who was at the time had just become the art director of MAD. Yeah. And so I thought, oh boy, I've got Sam Viviano all to myself for a whole weekend. I'm gonna, yeah. He can't get away from me because I'm buying all of his food, right? So he has to come back because at some point he's gonna want to eat. So I wrote and drew a full movie parody of the movie Godzilla, the Matthew Broderick 1996 or 1997 movie.
Yeah.
And so I wrote this thing and I drew the whole thing. It was like a 6-pager, and I brought it with me and I showed it to Sam. And Sam, he said, it's pretty good. It's okay. I like some of the stuff I see, but he was very positive, but clearly, I wasn't mad worthy quite yet. He said, but keep sending me work. He said, keep sending me work. I'd like to see your stuff develop. Well, it's like, okay, well, I'll keep doing stuff and keep sending it to him. But then I took that same parody and I sent it to Cracked to show them. Yeah. They immediately published it, like in the next issue. 3-year-old movie. This was like 1999. And they published it, and I started doing parodies for them. So I wrote a Sopranos parody. I had a buddy of mine help me with the script and drew that for him. And then I did 2 more movies. And every time I would do a job for Cracked, I would send it to Sam and say, here's my latest, So the last movie I did for Cracked, the 4th one, was Gladiator with Russell Crowe. And it just so happened that the National Cartoonist Society, which had just become a member of, was having their big Reuben Award weekend in New York. And this was May of 2000. And so I went to New York for that. And Sam, they had a big MAD thing, like a big MAD panel with all these MAD guys up there. And Sam was there. So I showed Sam my Gladiator parody in person. And this time he saw something he really liked. And he was looking at it. He was going, okay, yeah, your stuff has really come along. I think we'd love to give you some work at MAD. But there's a little problem. You're working for Cracked, and you can't have a byline in Cracked and MAD at the same time. That was just a private policy that they had. Yeah. And I said, no, that's no problem. I don't work for Cracked anymore. And he says, you don't? When did that happen? And I said, 3 seconds ago. And Sam was like, no, wait. I can't promise that we'll get you a job anytime soon. I don't want you to quit your Cracked job, because who knows, it might be 6 months before we can call you and give you a job. And I said, that's all right. I'm done with Cracked. Cracked was not really Cracked anymore at that point anyway. It had been sold to American media, and it was a total disaster.
Yeah.
But
who was the editor at the time in Cracked?
Dick Culpa.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Mort Todd days were done?
That was before the Mort Todd days were done.
Right. Okay.
Mort Todd was editor for a while it was still in New York, and then
he moved to Florida, right? Something like that.
Globe was it Globe Publications or something like that owned it, and then it was bought by American Media, and American Media took one look at the sales of Cracked and they said, we're not going to publish this. See, American Media bought the National Enquirer, which was so they just bought the entire publication company, Globe, just so that they could acquire the Enquirer. And then along came a bunch of other publications, and Cracked was one of them. And they were like, this magazine doesn't make any money. We're done with it. But they had one guy who was an editor or a creative director or something with Cracked named Dick Culpa. And he said, wait a minute, I will save Cracked. I'll be the publisher and I'll do all this stuff. Well, the first thing he did was take the page rate and drop it down to like nothing. So
Yeah.
John Severin and Wally Brogan and Art Bollinger and all the guys that had been drawing for Crack Forever and writing for Crack Forever were like, we're not going to work for that. So he needed all new people, which is how I got that job and why he bought that Godzilla thing. But yeah, so then Sam called me in May or June, like a month later, and I did a job, and then I did another job, and then I did another job, and then 20 years later, I'm done doing jobs.
Yeah. Yeah, I was hoping to get into that. I want to be mindful of your time. We didn't really discuss like a time frame. We've been talking for like an hour so far. I can keep going if you guys want to. I totally understand if you have lives to get back to. But
we can go a little bit, maybe another,
Sure.
10, 15 minutes maybe.
Whatever.
yeah, so I did want to talk a little bit about the apparent demise of MAD. It's been sort of a slow going. Like we've had news stories from like 2019 to current. Like one just pops up every once in a while, just reminding us that like, no, it is still, but not really. And I think recently, Tom, there was the first issue in like 2 decades that didn't have some of your work in it. I mean, it's
12 years. Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? Like, how are you guys feeling about this? I mean, assuming it's done, but yeah, I know it's a dumb question, but I just figure letting you guys kind of talk might be better than.
Well, I mean, you have to go back further in 2019 because basically DC Comics decided they were going to move to Burbank because they saw the success Marvel was having with the movies and expanding their the Marvel universe, and just said we can't make those same kind of deals if we're located in New York. So they wanted to get out there, have a real presence, have a lot of people out there in the movie industry involved. So they moved DC out. I think they lost about a third of their New York staff that declined to travel from New York to California to stay in their jobs. But I'm saying so, and at the same time, MAD was part of DC. MAD was in the same building as DC, and they said we're going to move MAD out to California. So anyone on staff, if you come with us, you'll have your same job, and if you don't, then you'll get a severance pay. And literally every single person on the MAD staff said no, we don't want to go. So they're going to move MAD to California, but move none of the people who edit MAD or make MAD or art design MAD. So. Yeah. Faced with this, they said, okay, why don't you guys stay in New York? We'll find some space for you there, and we'll revisit this, down the line. And down the line was 3 years later, and they said, okay, now we want to move MAD to California. We got space set aside for you. Again, same offer. Come to California, keep your job. And everyone said no. One of the people working in the art department agreed to go, but everybody, like none of the editors, Sam, the art director, nobody was willing to move. So, but this time they said, well, we're moving it. So they moved, we determined to do it. So they did move it to California, but they hired Bill Morrison as editors. They hired a bunch of other people for the staff. But there was like a real break in continuity between the New York MAD that had been in there for like 60 years and the California MAD, in that there's not a lot of turnover in MAD history in the offices. And that is there. Like Nick Meglin started at MAD in the 50s, and then he became like the top editor like around 1984, 85. So it's like a long apprenticeship to get one notch up on the ladder. But that's how it worked at MAD, because it's a small group and it's a very, very steady place. All the artists and writers, nobody's an employee, but people were there for 30 years, 40 years, as a freelancer. But you're a freelancer on every issue. So they had a break in MAD. They had some trouble, adjusting into like the MAD style and things. They had their own ideas, but I mean, the corporate backing for the magazine was not the strongest already. So I think they kind of got hung out to dry a bit in California, and it didn't work. And I guess whatever they were doing wasn't, increasing sales enough. And now you can't even buy MAD on a newsstand anymore. They canceled the distribution deal, or they let it lapse. So. It's just, and now it's basically a reprint magazine, which is a lot cheaper to produce, but you're not, commissioning anything new. And so a lot of, So unhappy for a lot of people who were there, the remaining people at Mad. It's unhappy for people who've, been cut loose, or, just even the old timers who didn't work much for Mad, but, still have such affection for it.
I get, yeah, as an outsider, I mean, there's obviously so much that I don't know and can't really comprehend about like the cause and effect of,
The main cause and effect is that, Mad used to sell 2 million copies every issue, and now they don't. I mean,
yeah.
And the cause and effect is look at all the other magazines in America that are. It's basically you're putting out a product where it's the number of sales is just shrinking incrementally for decades.
Yeah.
So basically, like Al Felstein's the guy who rose Mad at 2 million sales. By the time he left, I think it was probably a third of that or half of that was gone already. But it was still a tremendous number compared to what they sell today, any magazine. So.
Yeah, there's a pretty dramatic spike in distribution numbers.
Right.
I did a video on that, and it's but like when I as an outsider looking in, I think like one of the things that bothered me is that I felt like with few exceptions, there weren't the same sort of like household names for artists. I think there are some very notable exceptions. Tom, you're one of them, right? Like that come in and then like rise up to become synonymous with Mad. And so
to a degree, though. I mean, Al Jaffe was there with Tom. Sergio Aragones was there with Tom. I mean, Peter Cooper, who did Spy vs. Spy for something like 23, 25 years.
Yeah.
They had Paul Coker was there since like 1960. He was still there. There were a lot of people who somebody reading Mad in 1970 would say, "Oh yeah, that guy, I know him."
Yeah, well, and I guess that's where I think my perception of it is wrong. I think that probably what was the larger cause of a lot of was that like the top end, the editorial, those people who were in the offices not moving over. Like I didn't really, I guess, consider that as much as impactful as like getting, I guess, like fresh artists and like in to excite people.
Right. Well, there was a period where basically Mad was a bit of a closed shop, even more so on the art side than the writing side. But basically, in a very Bill Gaines was the publisher. He had sort of a very paternal attitude. And once you were in Mad, you were in Mad. But it was really hard to get in Mad in the first place. But then once you were in, he felt like here's a person who's done good work for us. We should keep giving them the opportunity to keep doing good work. And you only have so many pages per issue. You only have so many issues per year. So they weren't working in a lot of people. So once you got to like 1969, 1970, you really had a set cast that worked, that didn't change very much and didn't for about 22, 24 years. I was one of the people who got in. People like Rick Tolka, people like Mike Snyder, myself. And I think a lot of that was sort of because some of the older guys were retiring, some of them were dying, and sort of like they had still had the magazine to put out, but they just weren't able to, or some of them were not well, they weren't healthy enough to continue producing at the same pace. And so it's just sort of luck of the draw in some ways. I mean, obviously the people were good enough who stuck. They were doing good stuff, but people were doing good stuff applying to Mad in 1971, and they just weren't really getting in because there was a very tiny crack in the door to get in at that point. Yeah.
That's okay. This is like, Desmond, you've opened up this whole new world.
Door perception.
Well, no, like you've expanded my understanding of like what I thought was like how things were run and how things actually were happening. And so I'm sort of like I'm kind of like processing this right now. Okay. All right. Real quick, I do want to I have a follow-up question, completely unrelated. Tom, artistic influences for you. Do you have like sort of a list of the biggest influences for you artistically?
Yeah, I went through a lot of different phases as an artist. Most of my stuff was comic book related, as opposed to, like more humorous type stuff.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I loved the Disney comics and the Harvey comics, like Richie Rich, Casper, and that type of thing. and the Karl Barks Duck books,
Yeah.
which, you know, I had no idea how great the art was for that. You know, it's like just really cool. Later on, you know, you look at it and go, wow, Karl Barks. But then I was also, of course, into Batman. So a lot of the early, like, 70s Batman artists were big for me. So Neil Adams,
Yeah.
Dick Giordano was still doing stuff for Mad at that time. Dick Giordano was a big Mad Batman guy. Carmen Infantino, he was a little earlier in the 60s, but I loved his stuff too. Then later on,
how do you say the name? Briefoil?
Norm Breyfogle.
Yeah, Breyfogle. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a little later. He was more in the 80s.
All right.
But I still followed Batman, but I kind of got out of comic books, and that's when I actually discovered Mad as a kid, when I was like 5th grade or so. But then later on, when I started really studying Mad as an artist, that's when I discovered how brilliant Wally Wood was, and Will Elder, and Mort Drucker and Jack Davis. And so I kind of came back to the Mad stuff that I read as a kid, and then all of a sudden those artists really influenced me. But other illustrators too. Like probably my all-time favorite illustrator is a guy named Andrew Loomis, who wrote a lot of how to draw books, like how to do portraits, how to illustrate, how to cartoon. But he was a big illustrator back in the day, and I got introduced to him through these how to draw books that he did, and then looked up his stuff. And of course, kind of the usual suspects, guys like Maxfield Parrish, and I'm kind of spacing out names right now. But those were the guys that I looked at a lot of their art, and all influenced me. But
yeah,
if people would just say, like, who's your all-time favorite Mad artist, most people would figure I would say Mort Drucker, just because my style or my type of drawing is similar to his.
Can I make a guess?
Yeah, go ahead.
Jack Davis.
No, Jack was, I mean, unbelievable. He's a god. But my all-time favorite Mad artist is Wally Wood.
Yeah.
His stuff, he could do anything. The guy was unbelievable. So you wouldn't really look, you look at my stuff and you go, well, obviously he's a huge Davis and Drucker fan. And you don't see a lot of Wood's, influence in my work really, but it's definitely there. It's just a little bit more in the DNA end of things.
Well, and also, something just clicked, which was like Wally Wood. He would, I believe there was like early Mads where he had the pages. I might be confusing him with Will Elder, but where he would do the funny pages, and it was like a Mad version of all of these different comic pages, and he was able.
Elder and Wood both parodied comic strips at different times. So
all right, yeah, and so it would be like he had all of their styles just nailed perfectly.
Wally Wood did one article. It was like an office party for comic characters, and I don't know what issue you'd see. Probably sometime around 1960 or so. And it's kind of 2-page spread I imposed on poor Tom with the Hobbit article. So it's an office room, one giant 2-page panel, and there's got to be 65 comic characters, all like getting drunk or hitting onto a secretary or whatever, and all of them drawn into individual styles of the comic strips, and the layout is clear and the jokes are easy, and it's just an amazing piece of work by him, and just to put that together as a construction project.
So amazing. My favorite article, Mad did a book called Inside Mad a number of years ago.
Yeah,
and it's a big book, and they asked a lot of the Mad usual gang of idiots, what's your favorite thing from the magazine that you didn't do? And mine was, and it's still my favorite article, was called The Mad Comic Opera that Wally Wood drew,
Yeah.
where he did very realistic versions of all these comic characters,
Yeah.
like Dagwood and
Tarzan.
Tarzan, and
All
it's just
together.
beautiful. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
incredible how he did it. It's just amazing, and so but I've got a lot of influences. Just there's little touches of people and all different artists and all my stuff.
Yeah. Well, I got a copy of that Inside Mad when I was in high school, and I haven't cracked it open since high school, so I'm going to have to look through that. But
Well,
did Wood?
Inside Mad? There's one is a paperback from back when, but the title was reused a couple of years ago for a hardcover book.
Yeah.
No, this one's old.
Right. The Inside Mad one is much more recent. It's probably about 5 years ago or something.
This one right here.
Right.
Oh wait, no, that's not what I have. Ah, geez.
Yeah.
All right.
Inside Mad is one of the earlier Mad paperbacks. I know exactly what you're talking about. Tom,
Okay.
tell me your Apatow thing on there, Tom.
Oh yeah. So Judd Apatow did the foreword for this book,
Yeah.
and he spends the entire foreword bitching about how Mad never did a parody of any of his TV shows or movies. That's the whole point of the entire foreword. He's complaining about that, but the thing was that then Mad had Des and I do a splash that basically spoofed all of Apatow's movies and TV shows. So like literally everybody's in there. And so you read him complaining about it, and then you turn the page, and there's this 2-page spread.
Doing exactly what he wanted. And
I love it.
It's funny you see that because Tom says you can't see Wally Wood in his work, but when he lays out pages like that, to 2 pages with so many different characters, it's very similar to that cartoon character Office Party article.
Yeah.
I mean, they're saying not the style, not the look, but the whole sort of thinking process behind making everything work. I mean, I see it anyway. I don't know if it.
Well,
for sure.
Was it Wally Wood who did Starchy?
No,
that was Will Elder.
Ah, dang it! All right.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was making this brilliant connection, but I wasn't. The book I just remembered though that I was thinking of is Dick DiBartolo's Good Days and Mad. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Which is that's an old book. All right. But hey, before you guys try to zip out of here, I want to revisit Claptrap. Claptrap is your Indiegogo campaign. We're at 50,536. I don't know. Maybe it jumped up. I don't know. Let's see. It did. Somebody bought something.
Oh,
nice.
Watching your show.
I'm taking credit for that one, boys. All right, so you got the putts level. I mean, we're one step closer now to that pick your sketch parody for those people who backed at the where is it? The Schmendrick level, which at Schmendrick and up, all of it. See, that is like, I don't think people understand what an unbelievable deal that is. So like if you get Knucklehead, you're getting Knucklehead, but you're also getting the Zoom, you're getting the Schmendrick, you're getting Doofus, you're getting Schmuck, you're getting Dolt.
You're getting called a lot of names. Not only are you
our backers in so many ways.
Not only are you a knucklehead, but you're a clod, you're a nebbish.
You're all those things.
Schmendrick.
Oh my gosh. And then the stretch goal 3 at 55, you're opening up an 11th parody.
Right.
And I have a question. Is it anybody who backs, because you said that you're going to have 2 more that are going to be.
Those are already in the book. We have 10 parodies. We know what 8 of them are going to be at this point.
Okay.
We revealed but they'll be coming in the near future, starting tomorrow.
Okay.
But that'll open up an 11th parody, which we don't have definite designs on yet. But we have a list of many movies that can be done. We're going to be people who have voted on the movies before that, and we'll know what their interests lie. Where their interests lie, I should say. So, it'll be another one of the movies that people like very much.
All right. And so, is it any backer will be able to have input on that 11th one?
If you scroll down, I forget what the name of it is, but basically, you get Keep going.
Thanks, Kyle.
There it is. There. So thanks and input. So basically, that's anyone who is at that level or above. They'll have their name printed in the book inside in a special section, and they get to vote on the 2 parodies that are open for the backers to decide. And if we get an 11th parody or even a 12th, who knows what's down the line, then we'll make arrangements for that as well. But so again, the backers are the ones who are making the book happen. Like Tom can draw and I can write, but if nobody was interested in this, then there wouldn't be a book and there wouldn't be any parodies at all. So we have like nothing but appreciation and gratitude for the people who want to keep the movie parodies, the format going, even though it's not going in Mad anymore.
Yeah. Well, and obviously there's a lot of people that love what you guys do, and I'm very grateful that you're venturing out and doing this. And just real quick, like I back a lot of stuff on Indiegogo. It's like kind of my new comic book store. But it can be kind of scary to back something. It's not like going and picking something off the shelf. However, Tom, it's important to point out, Tom, you have experience self-publishing. You've done this with the Coronacatures, right? It wasn't an Indiegogo, but you went through this whole process of planning, binding, printing, all of that stuff, right?
I wrote a book, The Mad Art of Caricature, that back in 2011, that just got my 10th printing of that done. And that wasn't crowdfunded or anything. I just did a book. I self-published it. I distribute it myself. I've got a distributor, so it's actually in brick and mortar stores. Like my distributor, they sell it to Baker and Taylor and Ingram and these book wholesalers, which in turn sell it to brick and mortar stores. It's on Amazon all over the world. And so I know I've got my own publishing company.
Yeah, that is
Deadline Demon Press.
Nice. What is it called?
Deadline Demon Publishing.
Nice. That's it. It's helpful to know as a backer. Like these are guys that deliver, and they're pros. They've been doing. This isn't their first.
Tom and I were talking about the fact that he had such a great success on a self-publishing project like this. I mean, it's just a real encouragement. So that, there's a lot of worry in this, and you just go, well, it's worked before, it's going to work again.
Yeah. Sketchy Works. He says it sucks that we have to wait a whole year to get it. You can't rush perfection, bro.
You get in 3 weeks and you won't like it.
We have to write it and draw all of it. So this isn't something that we've already done that we're just repackaging like a lot of some of these instant Indiegogos are. Mm-hmm. We're creating this whole thing, man. It's like 12 or 10 parodies. That's a year and a half's worth of current Mad level, parody stuff.
Yeah,
over that.
The book is about the size of like 2 issues of Mad, but issues of Mad had more than 2 guys doing them. They got it out regularly. Their creators with the workload.
I do now. I have a follow-up question, which I can't believe I didn't think to ask. Your typical, like when you guys were just doing things at the normal pace, maybe monthly. How long did that take? The process from like Desmond, you sitting down, booting up the computer, to Tom sending off the inked drawings. How long was that process?
It varied, but it's probably like a couple of months. It was very common because I would have to see, let's say it's a movie. I would have to see the movie. I'd have to make all sorts of notes, do some research on it, write the jokes. I would send it into the editors. They would go over. They say, okay, this is we're keeping this. We need something better here. We want you to add this. It would go back to me. I would change it. I mean, sometimes they would rewrite stuff in the office, but with me, they just would send it back and say, just give us more. So, which was more work for me, but I preferred it that way, and they preferred, not having to do it. So, and I'd send them the script. Eventually, they're going to finish the script. Then it would go to Sam Viviano, who's the art director. He would lay out the pages, put down the word balloons, figure, basically, space things out, do the logo. Then he would send it to Tom, and Tom would do his, sketches, do the thing. He'd send in, I assume you sent in the sketches ahead of time for them to review.
Yeah, do all the pencils, sketch it all out in pencil or whatever, and then send it to Mad for approval, and they'd look it over and say, this gag isn't really working here, or you got to do this differently because you're not explaining the gag properly or whatever. Then I would do any revisions that were necessary. Then I would do the inks and the color, and then I would send them the final art. So
And then
my
they would put
process
it in the magazine and send it to the printer, and then the printer would have to take some time, and then have to
Right.
get back to distribute. So whenever people say, "How come you're doing this movie from 3 or 4 months ago?" Well, that's how it happened.
It takes me art-wise. It takes me about 3 days to do a page.
Yeah.
From penciling it all out, and then inking it and coloring it. It's about a 3-day process. That's like long days too.
Yeah.
So doing it's going to take me 8 months to draw 92 pages or whatever this ends up being, depending on how many we do. So it's going to take a long time, and it's hard work. It's a lot of work. But the other thing is, Des and I are pros, and
we don't miss deadlines.
yeah, when we commit to doing a project like this, we're going to do it. We're not going to not do it.
They didn't. If you couldn't make deadlines, they'd find somebody who could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for coming by. I really appreciate it. Yeah, that's if you guys ever want to come back, or if you would be willing to come back, I would love to have you on to talk about Mad or Batman. I would like to talk with you, Tom, all about Ben Affleck's Batman, because I have very strong feelings, and they're all positive. But thank you so much. If you have not backed it, head on over, follow that link in the description. What are you still doing here? Head on out, go and back it, because it's we got to unlock that 11th parody. So I'm gonna make you guys disappear, and So goodbye.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So there we go. Thank you, all of you people who are watching too. I really appreciate you coming out, and this live interview thing. This is brand new for me, and I just appreciate the support. You guys watching, sharing it out, and it's making a difference. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Toodaloo.